Imagine a town where the single biggest employer, the foundation of the local economy, suddenly disappears. Or imagine a state that spends over $130,000 a year to house just one person, even as its overall prison population plummets to historic lows. These aren't hypothetical stories. They're the very real and deeply emotional paradoxes at the heart of California's correctional system right now. Hey there, and welcome to the California Prison Research Hub, where we dive into the complex world of the state's correctional system. Today, we're exploring a paradox. California's prison population has hit its lowest point since the late 1980s, but the cost to incarcerate a single person has skyrocketed. How is this even possible? And what does this all mean for the state's budget, public safety, and the rural communities that have long depended on prisons for their livelihood? Stick around, because the answers are more complicated than you might think. First, let's look at how California's correctional system got here. This isn't just an accident. It's the result of decades of judicial mandates and landmark legislative reforms. The foundation of this transformation was a 2011 U.S. Supreme Court decision, Brown v. Plata, which was the culmination of a series of class action lawsuits. The court ruled that severe overcrowding in California's prisons was cruel and unusual punishment under the Eighth Amendment because it prevented the state from providing adequate medical and mental health care. The ruling required the state to reduce its prison population by roughly 50,000 individuals, a 30% reduction, to meet a court-ordered capacity cap. In response, California enacted a series of major reforms to manage the population decline. The first was Assembly Bill AB 109, or Public Safety Realignment, in 2011. This law shifted the responsibility for many lower-level offenders, those convicted of nonviolent, non-serious, and non-sexual felonies, from the state prison system to county jails and probation departments. This was followed by Proposition 47 in 2014, a voter-approved initiative that reclassified several nonviolent drug and property offenses from felonies to misdemeanors. A key part of Proposition 47 was the mandate to reinvest the savings from reduced prison utilization into community-based prevention and recidivism reduction programs. The third major legislative effort was Proposition 57 in 2016, which expanded opportunities for nonviolent incarcerated individuals to be considered for parole and increased good time credits for participating in rehabilitative programs. These cumulative efforts have had a dramatic effect. From a peak of over 173,000 in 2006, the prison population has fallen to roughly 91,000 today, the lowest it's been since the late 1980s. Now for the part that seems to defy logic. Despite this significant and sustained decline in the incarcerated population, the CDCR's budget has not followed a similar downward path. From 2015 to 2023, the department's budget grew by about 45%. This has led to a sharp increase in the per-incarcerated person cost, which has risen by nearly 50% since 2019 alone, from about $91,000 to an estimated $133,000 in 2024. So, what's driving this fiscal contradiction? The report identifies several key cost drivers. Staffing costs. This is the most significant expenditure, accounting for roughly 2/3 of the CDCR's budget. As the Legislative Analyst's Office points out, security spending is largely driven by the number of facilities in operation, not the number of people in them. Healthcare. The state has dramatically increased spending on inmate healthcare to comply with court orders. The 2025-26 budget proposes over $4 billion for medical, dental, and mental health services, a reflection of the constitutional mandate to provide adequate care. Infrastructure and court compliance. Many of California's aging facilities would require over $1 billion in capital improvements just to be habitable. Additionally, the ongoing costs of court oversight and fees for plaintiffs' lawyers add to the financial burden. In response to these fiscal pressures, the state has adopted a strategy of closing prisons. This is a logical move given the surplus of beds and the need for budget relief. The recent announcement to shutter the California Rehabilitation Center, CRC, in Norco by fall 2026 is a prime example. This closure is projected to save the state about $150 million annually. However, the report highlights a critical and often overlooked problem. The state's fiscal calculus is more complex than a simple subtraction. The full financial benefits aren't realized immediately due to the costs of deactivation. The state implements a warm shutdown process for inactive facilities, which involves maintaining them to prevent deterioration and facilitate future reuse or sale. Advocacy groups estimate the state has spent $300 million to maintain closed prisons in this state, sometimes for over a decade. Furthermore, while a prison closure reduces the need for some staff, the CDCR's practice is to offer employees transfers to other facilities, which means the full payroll savings are often not immediate. The state's ability to turn these properties into a financial asset depends heavily on its capacity to overcome the logistical and financial hurdles of repurposing or selling them. The social impacts of these closures are equally profound. For rural communities that have long been economically dependent on prisons, a closure can be devastating. The closure of the California Correctional Center, CCC, in Susanville provides a stark case study. The CCC was the town's critical economic engine, employing over a quarter of the local workforce with many jobs paying upwards of $90,000 annually. Its closure led to an immediate overload of homes on the market and a population loss as workers relocated. State-level mitigation efforts, such as a $1 million grant to Susanville, are a crucial first step, but they often fall short of replacing the robust economic engine a prison provides. Finally, the report addresses a central conflict between budgetary austerity and the constitutional mandate for humane treatment. Cost-cutting measures, such as reducing funding for an air conditioning pilot program after a heat-related death, raise serious ethical and legal concerns. Such actions could be interpreted as deliberate indifference, a violation of the Eighth Amendment, and could expose the state to costly litigation. Furthermore, cutting rehabilitative programs runs counter to the state's own California model philosophy and risks being fiscally counterproductive by increasing recidivism. The report concludes that a sustainable path forward requires a shift from reactive budget cutting to proactive, comprehensive reform. The state should pursue a dual strategy: front-end reforms, responsibly reducing the number of people entering the system. This could include expanding diversion and community-based alternatives to incarceration for low-level offenders. Back-end reforms, incentivizing successful reintegration into society. This includes expanding opportunities for parole and earned time credits for program participation. The savings generated from these systemic changes must be strategically and transparently reinvested into community-based programs for mental health, substance use treatment, and job training. This holistic approach, which builds on the successful model of Proposition 47, aligns fiscal responsibility with the state's ethical duties, ultimately creating a more just, humane, and cost-effective system that benefits all Californians. That's all the time we have for today. We hope you found this deep dive into California's correctional paradox insightful. If you did, please be sure to like and subscribe to the California Prison Research Hub for more in-depth analysis. See you next time.